Hi, welcome back to Fast Recap, and today I'm going to tell you about a 2010 movie called Gulliver's Travels. Before we get started, be sure to subscribe to the channel. It's incredibly important to us and motivates us to create more quality content. Lemuel Gulliver, the head of the letters department at a New York newspaper, has worked here for many years and has no intention of being promoted. Gulliver is a typical Star Wars fan. He was comfortable in his little world until newcomer Dan takes a job with him. Dan isn't going to work in the mailroom for long. It's just a step up the career ladder for him. On his first day on the job, Dan tries to build relationships with the more successful employees at the paper. When he meets one of the editors, a beautiful girl named Darcy Silverman, he realizes that Gulliver is crushing on her. Then Dan encourages his new friend to ask Darcy out on a date, but the latter is afraid and at the last moment passes. After spending only one day in his new position, Dan is promoted to Gulliver's boss. Lemuel is depressed. He did not expect such career growth from the newcomer, and Dan himself added a spoonful of tar, said that for Gulliver, work in the letters department is a ceiling which he will never break through. Gulliver leaves work feeling frustrated. He sees the light in Darcy's office and decides to ask her out. However, at the last moment, as usual, he passes up. Instead, he pretends that he wanted to take travel material and write an article for the newspaper. Darcy asks him to send her examples of his articles. He spent a long time at home trying to get a word out of himself, and then he did something simpler. He copied descriptions of various tourist locations from the internet and a guidebook. Darcy reads Gulliver's articles and is surprised by his hidden talent. She asks him to write an article about the Bermuda Triangle, and Gulliver agrees. When he arrives, he climbs into the boat, learns to drive it in a couple of minutes, and swims out to sea. Along the way, he looks at a journal with articles on how to assemble a robot. Finally, tired from the long journey, Gulliver falls asleep. Upon awakening, he finds himself in the midst of a storm. Giant waves crash down on his ship. Then Gulliver sees a huge vortex forming right in the middle of the water and rising in a water tornado into the sky. Gulliver's boat is pulled into the vortex and he loses consciousness. Gulliver wakes up on the seashore, tied to stakes driven into the ground, with hundreds of miniature men bustling around him. There's an arrogant guy in a military uniform walking on him. This guy's name is Edward Edwardian, and he's the general of Lilliput. Gulliver faints again in shock. When Gulliver regains consciousness, he is already being carried on a giant stretcher to the royal palace. Here he meets the king of Lilliput, Theodore, his daughter Princess Mary, and Queen Isabel. All of them are not fond of the giant and call him a beast. After meeting the royal family, Gulliver is put in chains and sent to a cave where he meets another prisoner, Horatio. Horatio used to be the tallest man in Lilliput, but that's not why he was imprisoned. He paid attention to the princess, and Edward didn't like it and ordered him put behind bars. Horatio is a commoner and has no right to speak to the princess or even look at her, but he is hopelessly in love with her. Edward comes to the cave to take the prisoners with him. The people of Lilliput have invented a clever device to control the giant. They harnessed him to a plow and made him plow the field. Edward takes charge of Gulliver, with Horatio at his side. King Leopold, leader of the enemy Blefuscu, who has sent spies to steal Princess Mary. Gulliver and Horatio rescue the princess before Edward does. They then see the royal chambers burning. Gulliver rushes to help, but doesn't immediately figure out what to use to put out the flames. Realizing that this is the only way to save the king, Gulliver pulls his fire hydrant out of his pants and pours a powerful jet of water on the fire. The flames are extinguished. The last drops fall on Edward's head, and the king, not believing in his salvation, praises Gulliver for his bravery and ingenuity. Having cleaned himself up, the king invites Gulliver to a ball. The giant asks that Horatio be invited along with him. The king agrees. At the ball, everyone asks Gulliver about his past life and the world he came from. Gulliver reluctantly at first, but then with excitement tells all sorts of stories about his world. He goes so far as to tell everyone how he was president and also describes Darcy as his lover. King Theodore is also bragging. He says that the people of Lilliput are the best builders in the world. After catching the king's eye, Gulliver asks for a house to be built for him and gets one. Now, the giant lives with every comfort. He puts on theatrical performances of his life story, although the actors are actually playing the plots of different movies, such as Titanic and Star Wars. When not performing, Gulliver helps his friend Horatio impress a capricious princess. He gives him tips on how to impress the girl, and Horatio succeeds. But Princess Mary has already been promised to Edward, and she cannot refuse the wedding. even though her relationship with Edward is not working out. Edward tries his best to get Gulliver out of his country. He finds the giant's damaged boat and promises to repair it. Among Gulliver's things, Edward discovers a journal detailing how to assemble the robot. Gulliver is in no hurry to leave Lilliput. He is loved here, and everyone thinks he was a great leader in his world. What's more, Gulliver listened to the voicemail and learned that Darcy realized that he copied articles from the internet. Now she's furious because she's been tricked and will have to travel to the Bermuda Triangle herself to write an article about it. She says that wherever he is, he shouldn't come back, and that she doesn't want to know him anymore. Then King Theodore decides to promote Gulliver to general. Theodore realized that Edward was not doing well and sent him to rest for a while. Gulliver is now in charge of all of Lilliput's military. Edward can't bear the humiliation. He disables the defenses set up at sea. King Leopold sees this and decides to attack Lilliput. Theodore sends Gulliver to fight. He wants Lemuel to destroy Lilliput's enemies once and for all. But Gulliver is a good man at heart, incapable of harming another. He doesn't want to kill Lilliput's enemy. He tries to negotiate with them, but Leopold responds to the offer with cannon fire from all the guns of Leopold's battle fleet. Gulliver has to deal with the enemy fleet. He grabs them by their anchors and drives them far out into the open sea. For this great victory, new honors await him, as well as respect among all the people of Lilliput. However, he does not become more responsible. Instead of training the army, he amuses himself with his friend Horatio and idles away his time. Princess Mary informs Edward that she no longer wants to marry him. For the former general, this becomes the last straw. He goes to King Leopold and offers his services. He wants to conquer Lilliput to save it from the decay caused by the appearance of Gulliver. In enemy territory, Edward assembles himself a giant robot from blueprints from a journal and comes to fight Gulliver. He easily defeats him and forces him to confess that Gulliver has been lying about his past. Gulliver tells everyone that he is just an employee of the letter department. Edward then sends the giant behind a wall of fog, which hides an invisible island from Lilliput. Gulliver finds himself in the land of giants. Huge people live here, and he himself becomes a crumb to them. He is caught, changed into a doll's dress, and forced to live in a doll's house. Here, Gulliver finds the corpse of a pilot who accidentally fell into this strange world. At the same time, Darcy is found on the beach and tied up. The girl is locked in a cave. Lilliput is now ruled by Edward under Leopold. Horatio sees Darcy and goes to tell Gulliver about it. He is afraid to do anything, but then decides to save his beloved. He takes the dead pilot's parachute and escapes from the giant's lair. He finds Darcy in the cave where he was recently held. Here, behind bars, the king and queen are sitting. As they talk, Darcy realizes that Gulliver has introduced her as his lover. He has to confess that he is not indifferent to the girl. Encouraged by the confession, Gulliver decides to free Lilliput from the invaders. He challenges Edward to a fight. However, Gulliver does not know that he has improved his robot, and it is now electrocuted. They have a battle in which Gulliver loses. He gets electrocuted again and again. Horatio realizes that his friend will not survive this long, so he sneaks into the robot's cabin and damages the mechanism. Now Gulliver and Edward fight on equal terms. Gulliver tears a monument off the ground and hits the ironwork with it and rolls the robot off his feet and defeats it. Princess Mary and Horatio kiss and King Theodore blesses their union. Edward makes one last attempt to take control. He threatens the princess with death, but she wipes out the former general with a powerful punch to the jaw. Gulliver and Darcy also kiss. However, their kiss is interrupted by an argument between the two kings, Theodore and Leopold, threatening each other with war. Gulliver quickly settles their dispute with a song and a mad dance. Back in his world, Gulliver becomes a journalist. He writes travel articles and dates Darcy. Gulliver became a different man because he was not afraid, took a risk, and got everything he dreamed of. That's all for today. What do you think of this movie? Write your opinion in the comments. Don't forget to like it and subscribe to the channel if you want to see more such videos.